Okay, fine, enough procrastinating on this video. Indie animation. Now, that's a scene that's been exploring as of recently. Of course, indie animation has been a thing for a very, very long time, but never before has it seemed so close to being a mainstream thing. A lot of this can be attributed to Vivzipop for her series Has Been Hotel and Hell of a Boss. There have also been no shortage of short films like Fuel, or for those of you reaching your 20s and moving into retirement homes soon, like me, Alarm, Death by Lemonade, and Colors of Evil. There's a lot to praise about indie animation, whether it be supporting independent artists who you know are actually getting paid to produce the work that they are, or the fact that there's no corporations peddling and changing things around for maximum profit. But I feel like we're overlooking a very important subgroup of indie animation that started around 2015 and has honestly been going pretty strong since then. Some of these projects have created absolutely gorgeous pieces of art, stories, and feats of animation that pushed a lot of boundaries on what an indie team can accomplish. Come on, you guys know me by now. It's Undertale animations. We're talking about Undertale again. While the sheer amount of Undertale animations are about as hauntingly insane as the entire fandom is, there have actually been a few fully animated series about alternate universes, AUs for short, on YouTube. For the same people left in my audience who have not spent the last 8 years in Undertale hell, an AU plays on a core mechanic of Undertale, that being that there are multiple timelines of the game, only to take that one step further to say that some of these timelines have managed to branch off so differently that they formed their own separate universes, each with their own millions of timelines. And the undisputed, until recently because I'm disputing it here, gold standard, arguably the first and inarguably the most well-known Undertale series, has been Glitchtale, animated by Camila Cuevas. Hold on, Camila Cuevas? Stream, didn't she let a— No, shh. We are not talking about VR in this video. My sanity cannot take running another script about why you shouldn't touch children. If you are curious about the situation that I'm sure many people in the comments will be discussing, I'll be linking some videos that I feel go over the situation very well in the description. Just because I'm not talking about it here doesn't mean it's not important to spread awareness. And also, fuck you, VR, I hope you eat I've been a pretty long-time fan of the series. Actually, I should say I used to be a long-time fan of the series. I started following this series from the first episode, Megalomaniac, released in 2016, all the way until the release of the newest episode, which at the time of scripting is Hate's Origins. So far, the series has 2 seasons, with the third one in the works, aka Glitchtale Origins, of which 1 episode has been released. And the series is really fucking bad. I can't just sit here and say it was all garbage, even though I really want to. For season 1 and the beginning of season 2, there were some genuine moments that looked to be very promising, and somehow the fucking series squandered all of that potential until it was a pathetic rotten apple so disgusting even bacteria wouldn't consider it a source of food. That might sound like an overly harsh critique, but I am not even kidding you. If you don't read the entire Glitchtale wiki while you're watching the show, you're not gonna have a damn clue as to what the fuck is even happening. And when your show is relying on people reading a fucking Wikipedia to understand what's going on, then you've really fucked things up hard. Of course, there will be spoilers ahead, so if you do for some reason still want to experience the series for yourself, leave now and come back later. I would say that I wouldn't recommend wasting your time on that and just watching this video as is, but seeing as this video is ungodly long as well, you're just wasting your time either way. So let's dive into this melting pot of a series while I impose the insanity I have developed by making this video onto you so that you may suffer alongside me and discover the absolute agony it is to watch this godforsaken series. Oh, and by the chance you're watching this, Camilla, this video is fair use. It falls under critique, and if this video gets struck down, you guys know what happened. Camila Cuevas is a 27-year-old self-taught animator from Chile. She joined YouTube on December 2nd of 2008, but didn't start posting until late 2011. She used to work with Macromedia 8 to create her animations before switching to Flash CS6, and as of recently, Adobe Animate. Her first videos were RHGs, Rock Hard Gladiators. RHGs are stick figure fight challenges animators often issue to each other. Said animators would go back and forth on these animations until they were satisfied with the fight. These, like most early internet animations, were hosted mostly on Newgrounds, but you can still find a few of these videos at the very end of Camilla's uploads. Camilla would go on to form a group of animators called Clan Nemesis, and would continue to make animations for this series up until January 26th of 2015. She would also go on to use a character she created for the RHGs, Jade, in an original stick figure animation called Elements. Throughout these animations, we can already see some aspects that would become central to Camilla's animation style. Though her backgrounds and characters were pretty lazy, her animations were always fluid, and her most impressive feat was being able to string together dynamic battle scenes, which were accompanied by very impressive effects that at times even looked professional. This style of animating is a very recognizable part of Stickman animations, and would be carried over into the early episodes of Glitchtale as well. Between the last aired episode of Elements and her last Clan Nemesis animation, Camilla would get into the Undertale fandom in 2015, and would begin posting short, usually humorous animations of the Undertale characters. It didn't take long for Camilla to incorporate her love of battle animations into her animations for Undertale, with the release of the well-known Sans vs. Flowey fight. After this would come the release of what is now considered to be Glitchtale's first episode, Megalomaniac. Although at the time it was released, it was nothing more than a battle animation between Sans, Frisk, and Kara. With a whole new torrent of fans begging Camilla to continue the story, a slew of animations were released, each building upon the last video, until it eventually created a storyline that's known as Glitchtale Season 1. By episode 5 of Season 1, two creators, Sturlock and Nyx the Shield, would join Camilla in creating Glitchtale, with Sturlock providing sound effects and Nyx providing the soundtrack. Both of these creators are still working on Glitchtale to this day, and have done amazing work that frankly outshines the series at times, especially Nyx's compositions. Okay, editor stream, this part was written and recorded, like, before Nyx's thread came out, so this is completely inaccurate. Nyx the Shield is no longer working on Glitchtale, he no longer wants to be associated with the series. Please do not go harass him over this video, thank you very much. Also, obligatory Ultima Almighty mention. Long story short, he got really popular reacting to this series and eventually was cast as the voice of Mettaton until it was found out that he was sexually harassing female creators in the Undertale space. I'll link the Tumblr post in the description. Okay, so editor's stream here again. I took so long to make this video that the Tumblr post is actually now deleted, so I'll be linking a Google Drive instead that includes the screenshot and also the audio that was originally linked in the Tumblr post. Yeah, sorry, my bad, guys. Season 2's story would become a collaborative effort as two people, Vier, who had long been featured in the special thanks section of the credits, started co-writing on episode 2 of Season 2, all the way to the end of the series. And he's a massive piece of Devour is the second co-writer, who started co-writing on episode 9 of Season 2. For all of Season 1 and a majority of Season 2, Glitchtale was noticeably low effort at times. The characters all looked to have been drawn in about 5 minutes without even trying to fix any errors that were made in the process. The colors looked too bright or clash with each other with little to no shading in the background or characters. The backgrounds were very obviously lazy, and a lot of times the perspective was so awfully done, it looked like the characters had been green screened into it, or it was so distractingly bad that you had to go back to pay attention to the story instead of staring at the horrible backgrounds. This would get better in the following seasons, with a lot more care being put into the characters as well as a background artist finally hired, but they were still very noticeably bland at times, and we'll talk about the character designs later. A parody of the song Stronger Than You by Project NST was also released, featuring Betty's version of the song, which is
This battle between the two of us, only one will survive from her magnum opus.
Yeah, let's just say that Sans' version of the song is still the best one, no question.
Let's go, dirty brother killer.
Season 3 of Glitchtale is currently in production, which will function as a prequel to Glitchtale's story thus far. Camilla is currently streaming the animation of this new series on her Twitch. And then the Hopeless Peaches drama happened, which again, I do not have the brain cells to go over, and this video is supposed to be about Glitchtale, so I'll leave another set of links in the description, and you guys can go watch those videos if you somehow didn't catch the first 3 times this drama was revived by some new development. Alright. Now that you're more familiar with how Glitchtale came about, let's start talking about Season 1 of the series, which was arguably when it was at its peak, with each episode having received over 10 million views, when the finale of Season 2 only got... yeah. So let's watch this dumpster fire burn, why don't we?
Let's all feel the joy, let's dissociate. I'm a happy boy, I feel great. Hop aboard the tram, off to Happy Land, with a happy jam.
I'm going to attempt to make this as short as possible because this part used to be like 40 pages long, and I don't think anyone wants to sit through that detailed of a summary. So, the series starts with Frisk on a genocide run, and it seems like Kara is forcing Frisk to go through it. Midway through the fight, when Frisk wants to back out, Kara takes over their body and attempts to finish what they started. Frisk breaks free from the soul prison that Kara put them in, and gives his soul to Sans, who then beats the fuck out of Kara and resets. The second episode starts with Sans and Frisk wanting to talk about the last timeline, but Gaster intercepts and captures Frisk instead. Sans somehow teleports into the void, breaks out of the void, before Gaster calls him and Frisk gay, which kills them both. Gaster is on the verge of winning when Frisk pulls a no-you card from out of his ass and fuses with Sans, and their fusion form have an epic duel with Gaster, but they were stronger than him. Camilla also ignores the fact that Gaster was 100% willing to kill Sans, his son, in the following episodes going forward. Episode 3 begins with Sans warning Frisk weird shit might be happening and to call him if it does. Weird shit starts happening, and Frisk does not in fact call Sans. Frisk gets his shit rocked by Kara, who is now filled with hate and glitching back into existence. Kara is using the determination extractor to take Frisk's determination, and Flowey and Sans team up to fight Kara and stop them from erasing the timeline. Big fight, Kara chops off his arm and gets his determination anyways. Sans and Flowey flee with Frisk. They decide that since Kara is using hacks, they'll be using hacks too, and edit the game's code so that Gaster is a playable character again. They were still too slow though, because surprise, Kara has gathered the 7 Dragon Balls, and now they are utterly unstoppable. Gaster blocks the reset button, because apparently he could always do that, and they fight. Gaster almost dies, Sans almost dies, Flowey almost dies, Frisk finally decides to fucking do something, and he gives his soul to Flowey to make Azrael come back to life, completely ignoring how it is canonical that you cannot take someone's soul before killing them. Azrael has created a Deus Ex sphere around him and Kara, and they decide to have a little argument about who was worse in the past before they decide to throw hands and find out. Halfway through the fight, Azrael is reminded actually, no, they don't want to kill their adopted sibling, and uses the power of not explaining what is happening to cure Kara of his hate. Somehow, Kara pulls a new soul to give Azrael out of his ass. Frisk pinky promises he won't reset again, and they get their happily ever after. Yay, Glitchtale is over! Ha! No, psych, it's season 2, baby! There's a hardcore racist organization that somehow existed before the barrier was even broken. And they're gonna make life hard for the monsters. They do a horrible job of it because within a month, monsters have not only established restaurants, a TV network around Mettaton, a school, but also smuggled Undyne into the police force. Magic has also returned to the world after some humans make contact with monsters. Jessica, who's the head racist introduced at the end of the last season, is refusing to cooperate with Frisk, and even less so when he brings some random Mary Sue he met on the side of the street to an important political meeting. Frisk is actually in charge of convincing Jessica not to be racist, by the way. The monsters just didn't feel it was very important for them to try and do that. Frisk says the magic word for Jessica, which is family, and she tags along to see all the wonderful ways that humans can take advantage of the monsters. I mean, make peace with the monsters. Toriel shirks the responsibility of comforting an adult woman onto Frisk. Betty is revealed to have a pink soul. Nothing is explained, and nothing will ever be explained in the series. Meanwhile, Sans and Azrael have been trying to be friends, but it's been hard given that they actively tried to murder each other in the past. While they're sorting through their issues, Jessica trauma dumps on a child about how her child went missing. Asgore reveals he was the man behind the slaughter, and gets sent to Game Theory jail, while Jessica swears she's going to commit mass genocide, while a mysterious force offers to help with that. Despite the fact tensions have been rising between monsters and humans, Undyne is still allowed on the police force. Betty has become a parasite that will not leave the main cast alone even for a second, and Mettaton is somehow still allowed on national TV despite the recent murder revelations. None of that matters though, because Papyrus, for unknown reasons, is hypnotized and tries to kill a bunch of civilians. Sans tries to stop them, Jessica tells him no you and deletes his magic. People die, Frisk wants to reset, Sans does not. Sans has decided to break off his friendship with Frisk. Now Azrael is his best friend. Gaster finds out way too late that Betty is actually the secret villain that he forgot to remember because he's having memory problems right now, despite earlier showing no signs of having them, and Betty shanks Sans in her attempt to kill Azrael. Jessica gets an assist for this murder. Betty doesn't like that Jessica is trying to compete for the top kills on the leaderboard, so she takes the hate vial, which just so happened to manifest into Jessica's hands from her. Despite telling us that she is racially motivated towards killing all monsters, Betty only kills 2 monsters for the entire series. The rest of her kills were all human kills. Azrael runs away like a bitch despite being the god of hyperdeath, and Frisk gets depression after realizing he's stuck in a horribly written series. We also find out that long ago, 2 of the wizards that helped make the barrier, Copper and Agate, disagreed on whether or not the barrier should stay up. Copper thinks it shouldn't, Agate thinks it should. They throw hands to see whose idea they will go with. Agate loses, comes back with hacks, and wins with the pink soul of fear. And then she sacrifices her soul to make Betty. Jessica apologizes to the person who murdered her daughter, and then to the murderer of at least half a dozen humans, despite having very little reason not to suspect that Betty was secretly a monster, and making her more racist. Thankfully, Camilla just didn't feel like writing the racist half of Jessica anymore, so she just deleted it. Betty is plotting mass murder. Gaster is a tough, I don't feel no feelings Sigma male. Alphys is anxious. Jessica comes by to visit after breaking Asgore and Papyrus out of jail. Azrael tries to kill her, but Gaster is quicker. Papyrus suggests they talk things out instead. No one likes this idea. Jessica reveals she actually stuck a tracker onto Betty at some undetermined time, and Gaster, Jessica, and Alphys try to delete a Mary Sue. Frisk, Azrael, and Asgore are going to the magic school to evacuate children. Undyne is evacuating the city, but this only takes like 15 minutes. Gaster and Betty have a flexing match, and Gaster seems sure he's gonna win. Betty asks Gaster if he's read the manga. What manga? Gaster asks before immediately getting shivved by a new power Betty just acquired. We're introduced to characters that seem important but are never seen again. Alphys decides she wants screen time, and uses a new device that was spawned in for plot purposes. But Camilla quickly strikes the lizard down because she didn't know how to write characters who don't know how to fight. Betty is neither human nor monster. Ooh. Undyne decides that she can just undie now and proceeds to beat Betty's ass even after she upgraded using the hate vial. Also, apparently monsters can bleed now, don't question it. Frisk is traumatized by other humans dying because he knows he's next on the list. Betty is scared of the hate she drank, apparently it's consuming her. Jessica somehow makes an announcement from Gaster's terminal by connecting it into the city cameras, which were retconned to have speakers, and tells the humans to trust the monsters because they're here to help. Even though the things attacking the humans honestly look more like monsters, and humans should be more distrustful of monsters at this rate, the plot just ignores that. Jessica's soul is cracked, Undyne is tired. Gaster is more angry at Jessica. Frisk re-traumatizes Jessica in preparation for his fight with Betty. Asriel tries to go off on him, but Frisk re-traumatizes Asriel as well. Frisk gets character assassination and retconned into hell because it turns out he was the evil one all along. Frisk angsts some more, pulls the "you're not my mother" card on Toriel, and is off on his way to fight Betty after his previous insults raised him up to level 3. We also get retconned that actually there have been secret magic humans this whole time, and they're putting a barrier up around the city. Asgore has a talk with his son about coming to terms with his actions, and Asriel makes friends with the living demon inside of him. Meanwhile, Gaster finds out that Jessica has been omitting information from them, and decides she's not actually worth the effort to get mad at. This makes Jessica sad. Clearly very traumatized, Papyrus gives Gaster a talk about forgiveness, and how he feels he has to be strong for everyone's sake even if he's hurting inside. This works, and Gaster has decided to try to forgive the person who assisted in the murder of his son. One traced fight scene later, and Frisk is on the verge of losing before Asriel intercepts and dies in his place. Frisk decides that since everyone else is using hacks, he's going to start doing that too and powers up to kill Betty. It doesn't work. Betty brings back Ness to fight Frisk for her. Papyrus joins in, and Ness decides that there can only be one skeleton in this world, despite the fact he's being powered by hate and should hate Frisk infinitely more. Papyrus tells Sans that all you need is love, and it works. And Sans is alive again. Betty's ego is hurt because she's had to retreat so many times. She throws a mini tantrum about it by destroying all the souls infected by hate. We find out that kindness souls are somehow more immune, and Asriel comes back via unspecific means to fuck up everyone's day. Betty and Kumu become a fusion, so they'll be stronger than you. Undyne completely breaks character because Camilla armchair diagnosed her with depression, and instead of kicking Jessica's ass, spends the next 2 episodes feeling sorry for herself. Undyne almost lets Jessica die, the gang comes back with Sans in tow, and Frisk is glitching. Oh my god, it's the name of the series, guys, it's Glitchtale! Generic Yellow OCs decides to listen to Asgore, the king, who was recently jailed for child murder, must I remind you, who clearly endangered this guy's boss, about what to do to keep the rest of the city safe. Camilla has set her sights on assassinating Toriel next, rip Goat Mom, and Asgore blatantly brushes off any of her pretty valid concerns. Gaster is suddenly retconned to have always had memory issues, and nearly implodes after finding out that Sans is falling down. He lies to Papyrus, threatens Papyrus into cooperating, doesn't apologize, and fucks off to repeat Alphys's mistakes. Upstairs, we find that Asgore and Toriel never told jack shit about Betty. Great job informing your monarchy about a threat that quite literally is trying to wipe out your entire population. Asgore suddenly remembers Agate, who will definitely not be retconned to not always have been evil because that would be stupid. Betty's purpose is now a game of guess who, except every time someone guesses right, the answer magically changes. We get bullshit, Sherlock-adjacent reasoning for where Betty will attack next. The characters have seemingly all decided that communication is for losers, and don't tell the king or queen that the royal scientist is dead. Somehow, they magically run into the person they were looking for, even though Betty should 100% be more focused on killing all of Frisk's friends to lower their determination and make them easier to kill. Asriel has finally decided to stop laying on the side of the series like a wilting weed and actually does something by bodying both of his parents. Glitchtale teaches us that if you make one bad mistake in your life, said mistake is completely unforgivable. Frisk calls a retreat, Betty lets them because her favorite show was airing and she didn't want to miss the season premiere. After the fight, Frisk decides he doesn't want to deal with this shit anymore and asks Gaster to help him leave the game. Camilla decides to steal concepts from the Fate series and introduces the fact that determination was actually in Frisk's blood and not his soul all along. After Gaster is done feeding on Frisk's blood, he magically transports Frisk into the void via Frisk's determination. Kara and Frisk both get retconned again, and Frisk's character is little more than a pile of bones Camilla continues to beat to make Kara look less like a bad guy. Frisk hands his soul to Kara, magically replaces himself with Kara, completely ignoring that if his body was already glitched, Kara, re-entering the same body, would also be glitched once re-entering the timeline. Camilla again proves you can't fuck with time unless you really know what you're doing, because with this single action, the entirety of Glitchtale up to this point should not have happened when it was established that Kara is the better decision maker. Frisk disappears forever, and we get timeline retcon, except no one knew what was happening while watching the series because this bullshit is so confusing. We'll skip to the first timeline. Yeah, that's right, the first timeline. Since when did this series split the timeline to have a first and second one? Who knows, who cares? Asriel beats the shit out of Kara because Kara made a singular mistake, while under the plot's logic, driven by hate and not fully in control of his action, and he fucking dies because mistakes can never be forgiven in Camilla's eyes. Kara glitches back into the first timeline and creates the second one, which is where the story actually picks up, and we can talk about how none of this makes sense later. Somehow, Gaster still has Frisk's blood in the second timeline, even though Kara would never have needed to go down to the basement with Gaster to go to the void. Asgore pulls the no hurries card when they have a ticking time bomb of a villain on the loose. Does Kara remember what he did in the first timeline? Does he not? Who knows? Keep watching to never find out. Gaster continues to be the only character Camilla is interested in writing, and he debates whether or not it's fair for him to play God, and goes through all 5 stages of grief except for the last one. We almost get a cool development for the fact that Gaster seriously fucked up and made Sans' last moments complete agony. I'm sure Camilla isn't gonna retcon this. Another character we don't care about gets shoehorned in, and Jessica took so long to be relevant to the plot again, I thought she was dead already by the time I got to this point in the script. We get a knockoff voice-cracked Mettaton OC in human skin. Say hello to his personality because this episode is the first and last time you'll ever see it. Jessica needs to go into the city, but it's too dangerous to go alone. Papyrus wants Jessica to take him. Gaster does not. Unfortunately for Papyrus, Gaster's PTSD acts up, and he violently slams Papyrus into a nearby wall, breaking his outfit and giving Camilla a reason to not draw it anymore. We love seeing more shows portraying PTSD victims as violent, unstable psychopaths. Papyrus gives Gaster a smackdown and reveals he's not as naive and stupid as Gaster is making him out to be. Gaster cracks under the pressure of having fucked everything up, but still cannot accept help even at the lowest point in his character arc. I sure hope it's a setup for a future character failure that leads to nothing but tragedy and not some cool epic moment, Stream says. For reasons unexplained, Asgore now has Alphys' phone. Asgore now knows Alphys is dead despite having not known 2 episodes ago and is not shown to have been told that information at all. Still get no explanation to if or not Kara remembers the first timeline or that he is in the second one. Camilla wrote these 2 characters like the leads of a rom-com and proceeded to get mad when she found out that they were getting shipped together. We learned that Jessica comes from a long line of racists in charge of keeping the monsters locked away, and her husband was Rave's brother. A few more vague insinuations about characters that never get cleared up later. Jessica is still being an awful leader by not allowing people who are trained with magic weapons to help defend the city. Mettaton gets a second generic best friend. Betty targets the arena. Arena for what? Who knows? Who cares? People in charge decide that sacrificing the rest of the civilians still outside of the arena is a fair trade to keep Betty out there with them. Unfortunately, this does not work, as Betty has pulled out a new move out of her ass called Dark Magenta Weaponry. Betty again racially targets humans despite having told everyone she's actually after the genocide of monsters, and has been shown to take Monster Soul, even though it completely goes against Undertale's canon, but whatever, I guess. But fortunately, Mettaton has also brought along plot armor in the form of weapons that have never been seen since, and will never be seen again after this episode. We get a brief reminder, it is in fact an Undertale series we're watching from the sight of these Luxes before Mettaton's true form arrives in the form of a box. Why a box? Why does this work? Fuck you for wanting to know. Papyrus gets cool, I can't believe he didn't die fight scene. Asriel doesn't bother to help Betty while she kicks Mettaton's ass. We get the only fight scene in which other monsters besides Undertale's main cast fight. Betty, once again ignoring all the rules set up beforehand, and for some reason decides it's still worth regenerating her appearance. One nonsensical explanation of Glitchtale's magic later, and we get more Deus Ex Machina abilities from characters you've never seen before and will never see again. But apparently we were also transported to the Ruby universe while we weren't looking, as everyone with trait magic now has a magic shield. Gaster almost dies, Jessica actually dies. According to the wiki, Gaster also lies in the scene, making Jessica's character growth completely null, even though this is 100% Gaster having a meltdown in the scene. Papyrus has a mini panic attack after he completely blew up Gaster's house, and oh my god, it's Sans Undertale and he is too up! Unfortunately, Sans is not going to be here for long. Say hello to him in this episode because he's never coming back. Camilla's 100% lying, we all know that Sans is the man behind the slaughter. He always comes back. Sans breaks the 4th wall, we get retcon that Gaster can no longer teleport, period, and Rave decides it's time to change his personality. Rave suddenly decides he actually cared about Jessica. Gaster turns back into his rah I'm so manly and no feelings version of himself. More magic technology that just seems to come out of nowhere and is only half explained in the series. Gaster sees himself in Rave and just decides to not fucking help him at all. More Sherlock adjacent bullshit reasoning later that clearly just isn't true and puts literal children in potential danger as he's going off of a theory that hasn't even been confirmed yet. Kara and Asriel have a rematch while Asgore and Toriel try to kill Betty. Maybe Gaster set them up to die early since only determination can kill fear. Or maybe Camilla just forgot. Undyne gets more traumatized, except, oh my god, Alphys repeats the lines Undyne told her in Undertale, and it's thinly veiled as an original speech since it's coming from a different person. How is Alphys talking to Undyne right now? You already know what I'm going to say, don't you? Fuck you for wanting to know. Determination unblinds Undyne's eye and she gets roped into whatever plan it was Rave was trying to cook up. A brief moment of foreshadowing that makes sense appears before Camilla quickly realizes she used up all the logic budget for the series and goes right back to nonsense with no foreshadowing or explanation. Camilla goes right back to dragging Toriel even though Asgore is a child murderer here, and she almost kills her ex-husband. I guess that's one way to finalize a divorce. We finally get a proper flashback that isn't some vague bullshit disguised as an explanation, and see that Camilla got so tired of designing characters, she just reincarnated one of the ones she already designed. The car gets T-boned by a plot device, Rave survives, his brother does not. Turns out Rave's mom is abusive, and that's why he was an asshole at first. Undyne transforms for like the third time in the series, proving that anime is indeed real, and Undyne is part of one. Camilla is pleading for you to ignore how stupid it is to give Undyne a new outfit, and immediately breaking it. Rave dies for the first time, and we learn now, in this moment, that he wants to be a good leader. For what reason? We'll never get one, like everything else in this fucking show. Even with all of Kara's cheating to get a second locket into the timeline, Kara's made their one fatal mistake, and so can never be forgiven by Asriel. Don't make me watch you die again, Asriel screams while actively killing Kara. All of the previous setup in this and last season gets destroyed by this one fucking scene, and the series has to twist and contrive itself into getting a happy ending by having Kara absorb Asriel's hate. How does it not corrupt him this time? Who knows? The wiki doesn't know either, and Camilla sure as hell isn't gonna give us a fucking answer. Gaster almost dies, again, trying to save Sans. Sans actually dies trying to save Gaster and Papyrus. This fight scene also reminds us that people would literally rather just watch the fight scenes instead of the actual episodes, because the show is just that confusing. Gaster snaps, and despite all the themes in the series telling us that violence isn't the answer, uses extreme violence to disintegrate Betty, and almost killing Papyrus in the process. Turns out that Betty was only holding the real monster back, and now that she's dead, everyone is extra fucked. We learn that Rave has survivor's guilt, Ronan is a fucking liar because he actually isn't over the death of his wife, and that apparently Raven is the best healer that they have. Ronan's finally had enough, and kills Rave, again. But it's alright, because it turns out that Rave was the man behind the slaughter all along. Rave guesses his way into victory because it turns out
a fucking boomerang did it.
And knocks Ronan out, which for some reason frees him from the creature's grasp. Camilla rewrites Undertale into a complete nonsense mess, just to butcher Toriel's character some more, and Asgore gives a YouTuber apology. For some reason, Camilla decides that Asgore and Toriel should get back together at some point in the series. We then are treated to one of the best looking yet most nonsensical fight scenes of the series, in which the final enemy turns from fear to all 6 other traits, to determination. Asriel dies, then undies, the fucking villain just decides to stop fighting out of the blue, and the scene cuts out as if the two just fucking died. Ray's abusive mom makes an appearance. This single interaction makes me wish that Rave and Ronan were gay for each other, and Papyrus will never get therapy. Okay, that's all of it, right? Ah! To take a break from the utter insanity that is this video, let's have an ad break, yeah? This video was sponsored by Veikk. Want a screen tablet that's not the size of a whole computer monitor? Veikk has you covered. Compact, with a very impressive pressure sensitivity, the VK12000 is for artists who prefer using their laptops for their travels, or even as just a second screen to write on at lectures. When you order this tablet, you will receive a screen tablet with 6 buttons on the side, 2 pens, a pen stand, extra nibs, an artist glove, cables to connect your tablet, and a cleaning cloth. If you've been watching the speed paint at the background of this video, that was actually done on this tablet. When I was testing this tablet at first, I couldn't get it to work with Psy, so I was forced to switch over to Clip Studio Paint. But seeing as everyone and their mothers know how much I hate Clip Studio Paint and don't know how to use it, take this review with a pinch of salt. I really like the pen pressure of this tablet. It was very fun to sketch on, though there was a little bit of a gap between where I was putting the pen down and where it actually landed on the screen. For the most part, I ended up being able to get over it after an hour or two drawing and accommodate for the misplacement, but I can understand how that can be a turnoff for many people. I also struggled a little with the small screen size since my old tablet is much bigger, but again, managed to get used to it as I drew. It's definitely more suitable for artists who are looking for something more portable to sketch or doodle on rather than a fixed main tablet. The customer support was also very helpful when I reached out with my problems, and seemed to have been improving their software slowly. The tablet is priced at $200, so it's pretty affordable considering it's a screen tablet. You can get 5% off too if you use the code in the description. Now, back to your regularly scheduled insanity.
All aboard the toxic train. Chugging on subjects of misinformation.
I had to give credit, unlike Camilla, to Cyrus, who actually looked further into Camilla's tracing allegations, and for pointing out that Camilla just flat out takes ideas from anime and at times straight up traces her animations. A Tumblr post by the user, itmorning, was made a while back, where itmorning pointed out that Camilla had taken scenes from Violet Evergarden and this other anime that I'm not too familiar with, and put them into Glitchtale. And yes, I'm willing to chalk this up as referencing, as Camilla says. However, it's almost undeniable the way Car disintegrates was definitely taken from this anime. Like, for fuck's sake, the shots are even the same. This isn't even accounting for the song that Camilla bastardized from Gurren Lagann.
Do the impossible, see the invisible, touch the untouchable, break the unbreakable.
You know what? This ass-pull of a plot point makes a lot more sense now that I know it was straight up ripped from another series. Or how she straight up traced Mob Psycho as well as My Hero Academia.
Want me to stop? Make me stop! Come on! What's wrong? Stop stalling and face me! You want me to stop? Make me stop! Come on! What's wrong? Stop stalling and face me!
Like, this is flat out tracing. Don't even try to pretend that it's not. There's 1 or 2 frames where the timing isn't exact, but let's be real, she could have just deleted those frames because everything else here lines up perfectly. And you didn't even give credit to Gurren Lagann for this one. Like, this is practically line for line stealing. If you were in an animation course right now, you get a failing fucking grade for this. Sometimes I do wonder if Camilla also ripped the idea of Betty from Monogatari. But that's pure speculation based off of this one line, and I've never seen this series before, so take that with a mountain of salt. Camilla goes on to call the poster a moron, which continues the trend of Camilla being awful to anyone who dares criticize her masterpiece of a series. Yes, I know this happened years and years ago, but I've yet to see much of Camilla changing, and I do want justice for this fan who was fucking dogpiled on by Camilla's rabid fanbase. Camilla has tried multiple times to shake tracing allegations by showing her process. The problem with this is she begins all of her speed paints with the sketch already done. This is crystally levels of bad when it comes to proof you didn't trace. We have proof that you do the line art and the shading on your own, but as far as the tracing goes, until we actually see her draw a sketch for once, it has not been disproven. It was glaringly obvious in the first season, but Camilla just does not care about backgrounds at all. It's pretty clear for a very long time she didn't consider them to be an important part of the series, even though that can't be further from the truth. Backgrounds or set design is how you make sure your audience is immersed in the story. It's what makes the world feel real, and when done right, create very important locations for your story. Camilla's backgrounds feel like they might as well be fighting in the fucking void because the characters are almost never seen interacting with it in any meaningful way. Tools and buildings just seem to appear and then disappear at everyone's convenience, having almost no setup beforehand or after, and clearly lacking any care being put into the design when they do show up. I fucking dare you to count how many times a new device shows up, and the interface to control that device is just the push of some random circle or square button. This isn't even making mention of the horribly clunky perspectives, or, for the most of Season 1, most of the backgrounds are just dead-ass a gradient. Not only does it feel like the characters are fighting in an ever-expanding void, this also doesn't take advantage of the fact that when fighting in a confined space, should allow the characters to use their surroundings to their advantage and gain the upper hand in a fight. But nah, no. Let's just fight in the actual literal void, I guess. This does not, in fact, get better in Season 2. While my friends and I were watching the 3rd episode of Season 2, one of my friends commented on how the room that Betty and Gaster were fighting in appeared to be endlessly expanding, and you know what? I couldn't have said it better myself. Camilla does not seem to be thinking about how big the room actually is, or where the characters are moving within that room. The problem with these fight scenes also extends to the fights outside, as the roads of the city seem to grow and shrink to Camilla's convenience. Look at this road and tell me it's a road normal people use and not one dreamt up by Camilla, so she wouldn't have to think about Betty, Sans, Gaster, or Papyrus crashing into a nearby building and eating shit, or like the cars on the side of the road. Like, none of this looks natural. This looks like it was placed here to have a cool shot in a fight. You never get an idea of what their surroundings actually look like because Camilla never bothers to define the surroundings they're in. And we haven't even gotten to how the backgrounds actually look yet. Oh boy, the early season backgrounds quite literally had no care whatsoever put into them. Expressive, atmosphere-heavy areas like the True Lab were bastardized, and you're made to feel instead like there's some kind of battle arena the way Sans, Flowey, and Kara fight in here. There's no side of the cracked tiles that suggests this place has been in disrepair for a while, or equipment used for the care of patients or determination experiments. Actually, the whole color scheme of the place has been completely ignored in favor of this bland, uninspired gray gradient. The least you could do, Camilla, is fucking use the interesting backgrounds of Undertale when you're able to. You make Undertale's world feel so lifeless and drained it physically hurts me to look at. What did you do to suck the soul out of Grillbees and Snowden? It should come as no surprise that when Camilla is forced to draw her own backgrounds, they're not only uninspired and bland, but downright bad in how little thought she puts into them. There's barely any character put into any of the backgrounds. I feel like I'm in the back rooms. This does not feel like the road of an actual city. This does not look like the road of an actual city. I have to ask, Camilla, have you ever been outside of your room? You could have taken inspiration from the city that you live in to make your backgrounds, and yet you choose not to. You gave us these colorful squares that we're supposed to pretend pass as actual backgrounds. No indication of a store or a restaurant or literally anything. Just square. Forget random trinkets or objects that make the space feel lived in and used. We don't even fucking know the layout of the house we spend the majority of the series in.
Speaking of the house...
I'm going to give you a series of clues, and I want you to take a wild guess as to whose house this is. There is a patch of golden flowers outside. Asriel seemingly has his own bed. Frisk is storing items they've collected from the underground there. A gift that Sans gave to Asriel is in this house, and Frisk, specifically, has a room with a closet full of his shirts. Did you guess Toriel or Asgore's house? Well, you're fucking wrong, because this house belongs to WD fucking Gaster. Why do all these previous things exist in Gaster's house? Fuck if I know, and we're never going to get an answer for it either. Gaster's house is apparently built in the middle of fucking nowhere and has three entire levels with an elevator that connects back to the true lab. Camilla's poor planning has also resulted in the walls of a room changing color between scenes. Like, how did this happen? You literally had one job for the scenes, and it was to keep the walls a consistent color. Instead, it turns from red to fucking gray. This carelessness extends so far that an important piece of information, like this hurriedly drawn house with no distinguishing features, is supposed to be the house of Agate, Copper, and Amber. We never see the outside of the house in the flashback episode, and even if we did, who the fuck would be able to recognize something that looks like this? This is why lazy backgrounds are detrimental to your story. Actually, we should count ourselves lucky that the insides of the house actually resemble the inside of a house. Because let me tell you, when you force Camilla to draw anything else, it just falls apart like a sandcastle. This is supposed to be the inside of a car. Why is it so big? Why are the seats drifting towards the right? Who knows? Who cares? Not Camilla. All of the background objects, too, look flatter than a fucking board. I would be more convinced if you told me this couch was made of cardboard, to be frank with you. Objects that the characters use and hold will shrink and grow in size. Most of the time, they look way too small for the character to actually be using. But apparently, Camilla has never seen what a book looks like, so she couldn't draw one that the character could actually fucking read. Given the state of the plot for this series, I can't say I'm very surprised. And by golly gosh, we haven't even talked about the broken perspective in this series yet. For reasons unknown to me, Camilla has decided to draw every background in Glitchtale in motherfucking Flash! If there's anything I can tell you about Flash, it's that it's very much less than ideal for making backgrounds. That background for the animation I did at the beginning of this video, not drawn in Flash! I drew them inside first and imported them into Flash. The only parts that were actually done in Flash were the walls and doors because characters needed to directly interact with those things in the animation. If you do insist on drawing all the backgrounds in Flash, then don't be lazy and use the pencil tool because it sticks out like a sore thumb if you can't do it right, which Camilla clearly cannot. While the backgrounds do get more bearable to look at as the series goes on, the same lack of care can be felt in the design, all the way up until the new series, Glitchtale Origins, where Camilla finally got an actual artist to do the backgrounds. What hasn't changed and remains absolutely atrocious is the designs of the MacGuffins that is the magic technology of this world. It has been made painstakingly clear throughout all of Undertale that monster and human magic are not the same thing, and in Glitchtale, trait magic, as it's called, is what humans use. So please tell me why.
Tell me why!
Tell me why the technology that Alphys came up with would be based around trait magic that she does not have in the form of these weird ball things. Monsters actually using their own magic that's canonical from the game, and not some knockoff human trait magic, happens a total of maybe 2 times? It certainly doesn't help that the designs for the magic technology that Rave comes up with has the exact same sleek, vaguely futuristic design that Alphys' MacGuffins had. You honestly would think these were designed by the same person. Now, imagine if Camilla had actually taken the time to come up with starkly different designs for the technologies developed by either side to show how different monster and human magic really is. Oh, wait, sorry, my bad. Monsters came from Jesus, who was human, so it makes complete sense that monsters would use human magic, wouldn't it? Speaking of the convenient MacGuffins in the show, how did Gaster's terminal link up to the AMD cameras? What is this terminal even for? We see it once and then never again. Wow, great. I sure am glad that we took the time to establish this existed. Did Gaster build an anti-human monster war weapon in the span of 24 hours or something? Because at the time in the story this is introduced, Gaster was still fighting with the humans on rights to expand the core to provide electricity. You mean to tell me that Gaster somehow managed to sneakily build this kill all humans and monster machine into the core that he was waiting for permission to expand? And when did the villain of the series get stuck with a tracker for them to be able to conveniently track her movements? And how were they able to lure her into the giant kill humans and monsters machine? Where even is this machine? It's clearly near the surface, but we never actually fucking know where this thing is. why did you bring in more magic MacGuffins like the Avalon, which is vaguely some shield thing that needs magic to run? We never get an explanation as for what it's able to endure or how strong it is. Why did Mettaton just have this spotlight that could literally freeze people who step into it casually at the arena? What even is the arena? Is that where Mettaton works? Why did he have multiple of these spotlights, and why did the second one not work? Why did he have to hook the second one onto himself? Did that one not have a power source? Would you like answers to any of these questions? Well, too bad, fuck you, because Camilla never explains anything. If you thought the set design for the show was bad, just wait until we get to the
Baby hotline, please hold me close to you.
The character design in Glitchtale was however many minutes Camilla could be fucked to sit down and draw said character for the first time. Almost every single fucking character, and I mean almost every single one, has either a turtleneck sweater and sweatpants or a turtleneck dress. Even people from medieval times had turtleneck sweaters, apparently. That's not even getting to how almost every single fucking woman is wearing a full-length dress. I'm sorry, is Betty the only one with skirt privileges? Yes, I get it. I know. Character design is hard, and it's one person working on the series, and animating takes time, so no, that is not a fucking excuse for lazy character design. As an artist and an animator, I think I would rather shoot myself in the foot before I let myself make a series with character design issues as glaring as this. Like, for God's sake, if you're really that short on ideas, go onto a dress-up app and, like, randomize some designs. Go onto Google and find outfits. Go to the fucking real world and just take pictures of clothing stores, because all this screams peak laziness to me. It screams someone who could not care less about the immersion of the world, that they were willing to break it with lazy choices so they wouldn't have to spend more time than they wanted on the boring scenes and just jump right into the action. Way to tell your audience you really didn't want to spend time drawing half your fucking characters. And let's get back to that other point, actually. Are you willing to sit there and look me in my fucking eyes and tell me that medieval Europe, or whenever the fuck and wherever the fuck Betty was live in, they had goddamn sweaters already? There's even an outfit that suits the time period Amber is in. In the episode, just use this outfit, please! While we're on the subject of Amber, actually, can we talk about the horrendous palette swap that is her design? It quite literally is just the inverted colors of Betty, who I would wager my kidneys and my liver was not designed with an inverted color palette in mind. Because you cannot fucking convince me this design was planned at all. This character makes me want to fucking cry when I look at it. The general rule of thumb when it comes to character design is the 60-30-10 rule, aka 60% of a character is made up of one color, 30% of another, and 10% of an accent color. This character snaps that rule in half, douses it in gasoline, lights it on fire, and throws it into a tornado. Sure, you could say that the green is technically all one color, if not for the fact that they're all very different shades of green. This one is a yellowish green, this one is a bluish dark green, and this one hurts my eyes to look at. There's already 3 colors, not counting the atrocity that is the hair and the shoes. This shade of blue clashes so hard with the green shirt it is directly above. I haven't even begun talking about the complete lack of coherency with the placement of these colors yet. Now, I don't know if there's any general art advice regarding this, but I'm fairly fucking confident that sandwiching such strong dark colors between 2 bright non-neutral and relatively light colors is illegal. And if it's not, it should be, because this makes me want to fucking cry. Also, why is nobody questioning that a medieval time baby has a fucking onesie? I am almost certain that it is not physically fucking possible for her to be wearing one right now, or to have a fucking binky for that matter. Speaking of awful color palette choices and character designs, let's talk about Camilla's other characters, starting with the NPCs. None of them look like real people, and you cannot lie and bluff your way into convincing me that they do. These clothes do not look like they're from a medieval era. In fact, the only characters that almost fit into that era are the major OCs that Camilla has designed. She couldn't even be fucked to draw this guy in a vest or something. And this is awful for your world building and breaks immersion in a series that already struggles with basic perspective and backgrounds. You've stolen from properties before. Like, at this point, I think I would just rather you plagiarize Attack on Titan's background characters so that at least they would have some kind of coherency to their looks. Camilla could have went into a dress-up game and pressed the randomize tool a few dozen times just to get the outfits of the NPCs, because at least then we would have some fucking diversity. Why are all the characters wearing long fucking sleeves, Camilla? Everyone is also conveniently color-coded with their eyes. It's nice to see people wearing the color of their trait if they're a kid in school or part of the magic task force, but like, you couldn't have found more creative ways to get them to wear other than a shirt plus pants or full dress. The shoes are also atrocious. For the entirety of the series, Camilla has never once learned how to draw a shoe or even improve Betty's boots. If you want to tell me that this is too hard to do for an animation, then do this! What are these? Fucking rain boots? Are you telling me every character in the series is wearing fucking rain boots? Even in her drawings, Camilla utterly refuses to draw the shoes in any specific way. Yeah, I get it. feet hard, shoes hard. That doesn't mean you get to learn to not draw them just because they're harder to do. But what if it's just part of her style, Stream? I'm sorry, I don't accept laziness as just her style. How do I know it's laziness? Because even when there are literal references for the outfits Camilla is trying to draw, like Undyne's police uniform, yeah, this was supposed to be a police uniform, Camilla still couldn't be fucked to do that. And for a series so centric on Undertale, there is a shocking lack of actual monsters, even though Undertale has a whole cast of them. I think we see some monsters in episode 1, episode 6, and then the epilogue of the last episode, and that's about it. Where are the monsters, Camilla? Answer me, Camilla! The designs of the major human OCs are actually so bad. I have friends telling me they remember the characters not by name or any distinguishing trait, but the color of their fucking eyes. As a friend has put it, it's like Camilla has a template for her characters and just changes the colors for each characters to make a new one. Some of the characters look so similar that I have friends who have confused Noah with Shane. If I hadn't spent so long working on this stupid series, I would confuse them too, because just look at them! It's kind of funny that this series is the only one where I've seen character designs deteriorate over time. The earlier designs of the Glitchtale wizards were actually pretty fucking good. And then Camilla threw it all down the shitter and made some of the laziest characters I've ever seen with my own 2 eyes. Shane, my boy, what have they done to you? They turned you from an absolute unit into a fucking twig. Ren, they took away your clothing privileges. And Cody, poor Cody. I accidentally mistook a fan's design when drawing you when I was younger because the original was so bad I didn't want to reference it. Agate and Copper, I remember Camilla specifically said she had designed around the wizards we saw from the intro to Undertale. That being said, why our eyes needed to fight itself to pay attention to the red, yellow, or purple on Copper's design is anyone's guess. The simplest answer to this problem would be to desaturate some of the colors so they aren't all standing out, or use them more sparingly and only as accents. But hey, I'm not being paid enough to redesign the characters for this series. For the love of God, Camilla, please just lower your fucking pride and use and credit designs that so many fans have sent you, because clearly, character designs are not your strong suit. Or at least put more than a few seconds into thinking about the designs of literally the main characters for your next fucking series. The fox looks like he's supposed to be the main character because he stands out so much, but no, he's supposed to be accompanying Ren as her bodyguard. Oh, and we haven't even talked about the skeleton with wrinkles yet, have we? Someone please explain the skeleton with wrinkles. Why does he have those? While the design for this character seems to have at least a little more thought put into it, the coherency is still clearly lacking in this design. This feels like a cross between modern and medieval styles, and I feel like I don't need to remind you how fucking jarring that can be when this is supposed to be a fantasy world. I have deadass seen better character designs with more coherent color theory from actual 10 and 12-year-olds. The shading in the series is also jarring. There is none for the earlier episodes, but it starts appearing sporadically in later ones. However, it's usually only one character at a time, and watching the series quickly becomes a game of spot the shading on the character. That's enough rambling about the art. It's time to discuss the... We've already been over how it doesn't make sense that monsters and humans would base their technology around human trait magic, so let's move on to everything else that doesn't make sense. Holy shit, where to start with this? Oh, I know. How about the characters' souls? Can you tell me the difference between an empty soul and a gray soul? Well, you would think that since it was specified in episode fucking 4 of the first season that this is what a soul looks like when the main trait is drained out of it, that an empty soul is what happens when you lose your trait. So then what is a gray soul? Well, a gray soul is what happens when a human loses their trait. Oh, I'm sorry, I lied a little before. Did I say that the empty soul was the result of your trait being drained out of you? Actually, no. An empty soul is what happens when all the magic is drained out of your soul. And this is what we call not planning ahead for your fucking series. One of the facts listed for the gray soul is that it's very hard to change your soul back the longer it's gray for. I think it's pretty easy to infer that just because soul has been gray for a very long time. And yet, throughout the span of a week, her soul changes color. Twice. It's so poorly explained and infrequent that both I and other fans have started using Jessica's hair and eyes as a mood indicator more than an actual reflection of the state of her fucking soul. I'm not done with the soul nonsense either. If I asked you how a human soul's trait magic manifested, would you be able to answer me? Unfortunately, I cannot even answer my own question. In episode 4, we see the leftover determination of each soul being absorbed by Kara, which gives him the power of all 7 souls. Except in season 2, we see these graphs in the background of Gaster's house, and it turns out souls are made up of all 7 traits, and the trait of the soul depends on how much of a trait the soul has, which should mean that the different trait magic comes from the true trait of the soul, i.e. integrity, perseverance, blah 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 blah. So then how did this happen? And by the way, aren't these souls supposed to have like special and different kinds of magic unique to each trait? Anyone care to fucking guess what's so unique about perseverance? Well, we've seen it stab and slash multiple times, but we can also see it form armor, which I'm pretty sure is something that should fall under kindness abilities. Well, apparently, it causes slow healing wounds and breaches defenses. You couldn't be fucked to show that in the series? And apparently all souls get a boost just by being near a soul of the same trait. Huh? When was this established, shown, or hinted towards? And this is literally just copied from Broogli!
Aura is a manifestation of the soul.
I also feel the need to mention that souls seem horribly imbalanced. Like, you'll need to read a paragraph of abilities for traits like perseverance and fear and come back to see a 3-bullet point summary for justice. The supposedly unique magic of each of the traits doesn't even feel unique. It just feels like lasers that are different colors. The longer the series goes on for too, the more Camilla introduces new abilities for each trait, and every subsequent time it happens feels more and more like an ass pull. Did you know that Gastra has this thing called chroma magic, which is monster magic that mimics each of the 7 souls, and that it makes him as strong as a human wizard even though it's been hammered into our skulls that monsters are weaker than humans, i.e. how they got bodied by a 12-year-old with a frying pan? What is even the point of the super special there can only be one determination trait at a time if Gastra can just mimic determination magic with his hands? Actually, scratch that. How did a rainbow soul, formed out of equal parts of all the soul traits, become the monster version of a determination soul? Because, in case it wasn't clear in the actual show, that's apparently the soul that Azrael has? The mere existence of the determination soul is so irrefutably broken that it makes kindness magic look completely and absolutely useless. Determination can create shields, self-heal, create weapons, create beams of megadeath, cause people to undie, and mess with time and space. Remember when determination used to just be the power to keep going no matter how hard things got, and allowed you to do over things that you got wrong? You remember that, Oranges? Oranges?
Oh wow, fancy seeing you here. It appears I've glitched into a different video. Glitched into another video. Glitch. I know Stream already talked about this, but when a small little orange boy stumbled upon this series, I thought it was completely fine. I didn't know it was impossible to lack so little awareness at 14, but 4 years later, and I corrected this issue by watching Glitchtale with my brain on this time. After watching the series again with Stream, I can say with full confidence that if I was on life support and the only way I could be saved was through Camilla writing a good story, I would just let them kill me because this series is a lost cause. 2 whole seasons, a mini-series, and millions of views and dollars, and the show's writing has not improved in the slightest. But hey, at least it looks cool. While I could talk about the inconsistent writing, the horrendous characterization, the somehow even worse animation in places, the fact that Camilla can't write characters who can't fight, the bland human OCs, this scene. Because like, where did the car come from? I'm getting distracted, sorry. One more detail before I actually talk about the prequel stuff is the wiki. The Glitchtale wiki. This thing is required reading if you're even going to try to piece together this shit show. You know, unless Camilla randomly chooses to retcon a major plot point, because forward planning, what's that? It's not that some of the greatest pieces of fictions were thought out or something. The last sentence is basically my feelings towards season 3 and the prequel stories. You try to understand the plot, you waste brain cells putting everything together, and Camilla just changes it. I'd say that was depressing if Glitchtale was a series I cared about, but it's just kind of annoying and... I can't skip this, can I? The Black Beast sucks.
Know your fucking place, trash.
This was made to retroactively explain away Betty's origin because Camilla just hadn't thought of it yet, but I'll get into how I know this in a second. So we find out that a Betty Noir is a spell a person can cast and is forbidden magic. This will be important later, trust me. It's also an inverted spell, which will be even more important. A baby started crying after seeing one of Camilla's awful human OCs, which is the only appropriate reaction to have in that situation. Someone's soul is shattered at the birth of this child who is inverted Betty.
Oh! Ew! What the fuck?
Sure. We also see the King of Determination we saw in episode. Genuinely, it took me a second to realize who the person with the orange hair was because of all the characters looking the same, but that is the first person who created fear. Keep that in mind for later. Okay, what?
That was really bad.
An established rule is that a human can only have one soul trait. How does Amber have 2? Because her parents had each one so you can mix them? If yes, then no. body, it's gonna make this episode really funny, and if no, then how? Let's all take a look at my friend and yours, the Glitchtale wiki. They have this entire section about souls, so I'm sure this will clear up any and all confusion about this episode. Human souls have a certain uniqueness in the sense that their magic is derived into many traits, all of which have different types of magic styles. In any one soul, there exists a combination of all of these traits, yet in different percentages. Thus, their soul is colored by the trait with the highest percentage, which is considered the dominant trait. Yet in rare circumstances, a human soul can host more than one dominant trait, which is well shown in dual-traded souls, and when a determination soul comes to exist due to a perfect balance of the traits. Why am I more confused now? So every human soul has a percentage of each possible trait. This is determination, bravery, justice, integrity, patience, kindness, and perseverance. Wait, isn't that just determination again? Oh my god, it's literally a fucking synonym for the other one. Okay, ignoring the fact that perseverance and determination are literally the same thing, every human has a percentage of those traits, meaning if your soul is orange, your trait is bravery. However, you are unable to use the lesser traits because the bravery one is the most dominant. Now, usually a person can only use one trait, but under rare circumstances, a person is dual-traded, allowing them to use more than one trait. But if you have the red determination soul, you have all the traits in perfect unison, so determination can use all the traits, meaning it should be immune to fear because kindness is. But it's not, as Betty was able to use fear on Frisk. Apparently I was wrong about kindness being immune to fear. It's actually immune to hate, which makes more plot holes. Number one, the whole plot point about Frisk throwing the determination into Kara, who wouldn't make any sense because that would not be possible. If kindness is immune to hate, then how is hate going in determination, which is the perfect trait of all of them? Or the fight Kara gets into at the end of season 2, where they use hate to fight whatever this thing was. So Azrael in season 1 took the remnants and the shell of the human souls to make a new soul, which doesn't make any sense. So can Azrael use those traits, or is that different? If acting out of character means your soul goes grey, doesn't that mean that Frisk was being a jerk to everyone? Wouldn't their soul be grey? I'm having a nosebleed, 1 second. So unexplainably, people are able to have 2 traits at once, and Amber is one of those people. We then get a colored version of the original fight between these two. They don't have names, I think. Bravery person loses their trait because they were scared of not Frisk, I guess? I don't know. This causes them to run away. She then comes back as a hollow version of herself. So Bravery Girl goes to attack Amber to provoke not Frisk, and it works. Okay, so when humans lose their traits, they're unable to use magic. But then Bravery Girl uses magic to shoot Amber. What is happening? Amber gets killed, causing not Frisk to lose their determination trait. I don't know how, since Frisk didn't in season 2, but we move. Bravery Girl's soul is cracking for some reason, and she has no choice but to use forbidden reverse magic to take Amber's body and use it to house her soul. I have various questions that I desperately want answers to. Okay, so in a previous episode, we get a flashback to the creation of the fear trait. The Bravery soul losing their trait also made her lose access to magic. So what the fuck is this? During her time away, she found the pink trait of fear, which would make sense since the opposite of bravery would be fear. So why is it dark orange in the flashback? She used magic to change her soul before returning. The narrator says she used the power of fear to overwhelm the determination soul and weaken it, which is not what we saw. Also, if you lose your trait, how did you use magic to like fuck with your soul? I don't get it. I don't understand. The bravery soul just killed Amber, and the determination soul gave up after that. The battle also destroyed a kingdom. Weird, because the most damage this fight caused was to a room, but sure. Maybe the kingdom was made from Legos or something and Camilla just like forgot to draw it. The soul was not able to adapt. Does that mean the scene where she was dying is when she had the power of fear, or after? She had dark magic beforehand, but in the backstory episode, I'm thinking about this more than Camilla did. I'm gonna stop. And now on to the second video. Please jump. Now we get to the part where Camilla starts caring more about her own humanoses, and the best way this is shown is through the fact that they don't look like complete arse. We see Cody make the best decision in this show and try and off himself so he doesn't sink with the ship. But thanks to the power of flashbacks, he decides the writing of the show is going to magically improve and he'll be making a good investment. Why does this guy look like he came from Attack on Titan? After looking into my best friend, the Glitchtale wiki, we find out the scene that plays next makes sense. It's very easy to lose a blue soul trait, as it's very common that people will go against their own morals to... Wow, I couldn't even finish my sentence before she got it back. What? Why even bother having that scene if you're going to immediately go back and make him regain his integrity? Just have the scene of him doubting her when he's saying like, I decide my own path or something. The scene would flow so much better if you did that. And it just ends? What? I think I understand what Camilla was trying to do. you know, Cody having an arc when he realizes he shouldn't live in his master's shadow, and I think he should decide his own path, but 8 minutes just isn't enough time to really have that settle in. Cody didn't really show traits that he was in his master's shadow either, so there's a real chance I'm giving Camilla way too much credit. His character arc happens way too fast, and the reason for his realization can be inferred instead of there being a flat reason for their change. The Thematic needs more time to cook. These two Fox kids are playing... I forgot, I'm gonna be honest. They lose their stuff and a mysterious creature begins draining the energy from all of the citizens in this town, and then everyone just dies. Fox person wakes up, cut to black. I wish I was joking, but so far all of these origin stories have felt like IOUs by the time they're finished. I know these are prequels meant to set up the main story of season 3, but why did the information I described take 8 whole minutes? I thought I stretched my videos, but holy shit. Yo, we got voice acting now?
I don't know.
Never mind, go back please. Gus's origin story is one of these episodes where I end up being really confused and frustrated, but not invested enough to really do anything, so I just end up sitting down and thinking about what could have been. I think a reason the Undertale fanbase love Gas so much is because there is so little info on him that everyone's headcanons can't go wrong. So I'm not really against the idea of Gas's origin in concept. My issue with Camilla is that the portrayal of Gasta every season changes so dramatically, and it's really weird. Because Gasta had no memory loss or some shit to explain why he was acting the way he did in season 1. And same thing with season 2 too, but he wasn't acting the same in season 1. After seeing another reused character, Gasta returns to his father's home, who somehow has wrinkles. And yeah, the skeletons have weird physics, but this bothers me a lot. His father, Roman, also says Gasta has access to all 7 traits. Okay, like all 7? Is that how that works?
You have access to all 7 traits, Gaster.
So Gasta has access to Determination, which is an infinite power source that heals all damage and is the source behind all other traits. How did this guy ever lose again? If I were to take a look at the two characters, Gasta in season 2 is nothing like Gasta in the prequel. In the main series, he's Gasta from Glitchtale, poorly written and held together by mystery tape. Gasta in the origin is just less interesting version of KO. Roman's teachings clearly don't show on Gasta, and a refusal to adhere to his teachings also don't really show, seeing as Gasta is prone to extreme levels of violence. For the first set of videos of this new series, I can't really say I'm too impressed. Anyway, back to stream.
The only thing that's worse established would be the organization that Jessica works for, the Anti-Monsters Department, AMD for short. What is the AMD a department of? Well, that would be the Human Safety Organization. When did we ever see this organization? Apparently it was the H building right here, and it was in background text occasionally. This organization and its subdepartment is so poorly defined, I have no clue what the hierarchy or structure is. It seems to have control and sway over stuff like the police force and major government decisions to the point where if they don't agree to something, a bill or law cannot be passed. Why did they give control of if or not monsters have rights to a department named the Anti-Monsters Department? It's like giving transphobes the ability to make laws against trans people. Oh, yeah, no, never mind, that's pretty accurate to real life it turns out. Still, doesn't fucking explain how this department knew monsters existed before the barrier was even broken, and how it kept this secret, but still amassed enough power in the government to be a major player when they did break the barrier. And I have to ask, what is Jessica the leader of? It's just the AMD at the beginning of the series, but no, actually, midway through the series, she's actually called a district leader? Why was she a district leader? What is she a district leader of? Are there other districts out there? How are these districts defined? Why is there suddenly a wizard council involved? What does the wizard council do? Why did the line of succession for district leader pass down like a monarchy from her husband to her to rape? Why does this whole system function like a monarchy? What position is Ronan in? We know he's below Jessica, but he seems to have just as much say and power as Jessica does in any given situation. So what's the deal with that? And if Jessica is only the head of a department, who does she report to? Shouldn't there be someone else higher up, or at least a team of people she's on equal footing with to talk and vote on what to do? What is Ray's position in this contrived hierarchy? He's not from this district, but he also has certain sway over here? What kind of sway and why? What kind of position was he in before to have been working in a lab? Why does he have troops of men under him as well that are trained in magic? Why are there magical troops? And why do we only see like 2 groups of them? There's this perseverance group and then the kindness group. Where are all the others? Where do they fit into this organization? Are they like the military subdivision of this organization? And if you're telling me to read the fucking wiki to figure any of this out, I'm going to throw you off a cliff because I shouldn't have to read a wiki to understand what's happening in a fucking show. This is the combination of a complete lack of planning towards your series and an incompetent writer who doesn't know how to establish or write political drama in any cohesive way, but dip their toes in because it looked cool or something. You might feel like this section is uncharacteristically short for how many problems the series has, but that's because most of the content from this section has been moved to the next 2. Speaking of, let's go and take a look at...
I have crippling depression.
Characters and themes, the bread and butter of any stories or series. Undertale had such an iconic, lovable cast of goofy, wacky, and endearing characters, so surely basing a series off of them will carry the same energy and already have a leg up in terms of its No. I don't know what Camilla has done with my precious babies, but in one way or another, they've all been brutally assassinated with no remorse. Toriel, the bitch mom who's overbearing and hypocritical. Undyne, sucked out all of her confidence and fiery spirit and replaced it with an depressed girl. Asriel, sorry about your whole character arc, none of it actually mattered in the end, and you will also be folded by absolutely everything with a pulse despite being the absolute god of hyperdeath. The video isn't getting any shorter, so let's just start with the overarching theme in Glitchtale and explore the different characters that represent the message Camilla attempts to be poorly spreading. Throughout Season 1, we get a very, very clear message that love triumphs over hate. It triumphs over violence, because only when characters were able to put down their weapons were they able to truly get a happy ending. Characters like Gaster, who were characterized as ruthless, cold-blooded killers, were punished for being so, by being unable to obtain their end goal. Characters like Kara, who tried to force his way into getting what he wanted through the use of hate and violence, were tamed by Asriel's love and kindness, and bringing everyone to as good of an ending as you could hope to have. This all sounds well and good if we just ignore how Gaster never apologized for trying to brutally murder his son as well as the child, and just held hands and gone along like it never fucking happened, as well as all the leaps in logic to get to the ending, but hey, some people can forgive the leaps of logic for a coherent theme and wholesome message. Until Season 2 came in and fucking ruined everything. The new stand-ins for hate and vitriol were Betty and Jessica, along with Gaster. Jessica's redemption was rushed and felt completely unearned, and expected the audience to overlook massive parts of her character which were very clearly established and then tossed aside for the convenience of the plot. Aside from Betty, Gaster might be one of the most inconsistent and infuriating characters on the cast. Gaster has a dichotomy set up with Papyrus, in which Papyrus represents the power hope and love can accomplish, while Gaster sees violence as the only solution to his problem. This manifests in several talks in the series, one of the most memorable being the talk the two have about forgiveness, and if or not Gaster should forgive Jessica. The answer is no. For the first half of the season, the plot falls through on its previously set up themes. Gaster loses to Betty and almost dies in his fight with her, while Papyrus is able to bring back Sans from Betty's control by,
Why?
Hey, do you remember me? Miss you.
Papyrus.
If we ignore how he's doing it, it's a coherent scene, just trust me. Even the ending of the episode would suggest that love, lowercase L-O-V-E, would be their way out of the situation they find themselves in. If you squinted, you could even say that there are clearly moments showing that Betty wasn't a monster completely, and that she could be redeemed in some way. When Gaster decides to forgive Jessica as they're both in mortal danger, he restores Jessica's trait and she saves his life in return. So, what does the series do with this message? This message that despite the fights, disagreements, and mistakes, love can triumph over all and prevail. Well, it fucks it up and kicks it to the curb, of course. When Asgore and Toriel attempt to rescue Asriel, no, fuck the both of them because they made bad choices while they were grieving. You can only be a good or bad person, didn't you know that? And any mistakes puts them very clearly in the bad person category. Even Kara couldn't fucking reach Asriel, even though, by the plot standards, he was corrupted by hate and quite literally was in a dark place and not himself. Betty becomes increasingly obviously an irredeemable villain who can only be stopped when Gaster killed her. And even then, from her ashes emerged an eviler entity that could not be stopped until they were killed. You cannot tell me love won here. He is disintegrating into tiny pieces as we fucking speak. Even in the epilogue to the episode, in which Papyrus is doubting the way to go is kindness and forgiveness, Gaster comes up with this vague bullshit explanation that no, actually, kindness is the way to go, and Papyrus just doesn't realize it. Apparently, Camilla also didn't realize that by having Gaster as well as Kara and Asriel defeat the main villain of the series through violence, it renders this message completely null, as we know that Papyrus would have 100% fucking died had it not been for the aforementioned three. Kindness did not save the day, anime fights did. And honestly, that explains why the last episode of season 2 has such low views. Well, that and the fucking plot holes this episode brings to the series. Grief, guilt, and regret are all themes that are tied into the series, as they were a large part of Undertale's themes as well. We see this expressed in quite a few characters, and the ones I'm going to be focusing on are Undyne, Toriel, and Asgore. Undyne was greatly traumatized when she was tricked into killing her girlfriend by Betty, and struggles with said grief and trauma, constantly doubting her abilities. Does that sound like the Undyne that was in Undertale? I'm not even saying that she can't be struggling with her self-worth after an event like that. I am simply pointing out that this submissive, I'm sorry, it was my fault attitude is 100% not the Undyne we know and love. First of all, Jessica had already killed one of her best friend's brothers, got their dad almost killed, had formerly teamed up with Betty, and didn't give very important information about the hate file she'd accidentally given to Betty, which completely changed the tide of the fight at one point. And you're telling me that Undyne is gonna sit here twiddling her thumbs like, no guys, it was my fault. Undyne would have no good reason not to suspect that Jessica isn't still secretly working with the villain, actively trapped her in a situation in which she would have killed Alphys. She would be the first person to kick Jessica's ass to Timbuktu and back. Out of all the characters you could have picked to go through this arc of believing in themselves again, Undyne was the wrong choice. Like, objectively the wrong fucking choice. And then, the character Camilla chose to accompany Undyne on this journey, Ronan, the bitch isn't even over his own grief and regrets. And he's out here giving lectures about how Undyne needs to move forwards. You know how hollow that rings? Like, God, this would not be as much of a problem if it was foreshadowed slightly, but it wasn't. Ronan was supposed to be what Undyne should look like at the end of the arc, but the motherfucker is still grieving! Oh, but this doesn't even compare to the butchering Toriel's character goes through. In Undertale, it's pretty well established that Toriel and Asgore both had faults when it came to how they dealt with their grief. Toriel did leave a kingdom that was just plunged into despair, and locked herself away to not deal with the problems that needed to be addressed and solved. However, throughout the game, Toriel seems to be the one who has reconciled most with her grief, while Asgore is still very much flailing and clinging to the past. Toriel quite literally changes her mind from destroying the entrance to the rest of the underground to letting you pass, and even mentioning that she will put her fears aside for the player. Meanwhile, Asgore is seen clinging to the past, longing and regretful for what he fucked up and the path he must now trek down to keep the spirits of his kingdom high. Glitchtale completely ignores that in favor of painting Toriel as the overly and wrongly concerned crazy lady who abandoned her child-murdering husband and is actually the one still drowning in her grief. The difference between them was apparently so strong that Betty was able to manipulate Toriel into fatally wounding Asgore because of this grief. Wait, what? I thought Betty's thing was fear! No, stream, save for the next section. Camilla even rewrites the reason for Toriel leaving and staying in the ruins for the series. She didn't want to leave her child's body behind, guys, because she didn't know how to deal with their dads. Fuck right off! And what does Toriel reconciling her grief do for the plot? Moves Toriel and Asgore closer to being a couple again, that's what. I could go on for ages about how Rave is an inconsistent bitch whose motivations were never properly established beyond proving abusive mother wrong, or is it living up to his older brother's legacy? Who knows? I could keep ragging on Jessica for having part of her character being completely ignored because Camilla didn't think twice about placing a hardcore racist as an antagonist, and how the longer the season goes on, the more and more of a wet cloth Jessica becomes. But I feel like if we really wanted to take a look at a complete failure of a character, we should really talk about Betty. Betty, oh Betty, where to start with you? First of all, we still don't even know who Betty is. Like, full stop. We don't know if she's part of Amber, the blue-haired girl who died so many years ago, if she's Agate, the wizard who made her, or if she's a completely new consciousness, or a mix of all of the above. The fucking show sure as hell does a piss-poor job of characterizing her. Could you imagine how much better the show would be if it had been clearly established that Amber was being manipulated by Agate from the start of the show, and slowly the hate that she consumed began to consume her as she fought Agate for control of her own body, or if Agate's hate for the monsters had slowly begun corrupting her? Wow, what a shame we couldn't have interesting writing. Like, you see these shots where it seems to be hinting that Betty is actually just Agate, which contradicts past shots in which she seems almost hesitant or unsure of what she's doing. She has knowledge of the past and before the war, which Amber was not alive for, and she's this creature Agate made to take care of the monsters to keep them sealed away, or dead, or whatever. But Betty almost exclusively kills humans throughout the series. You can't tell me it's because you can't take a monster's soul unless they're a boss monster, because she clearly takes 2 monster souls, those being Sans and Alphys's, no problem. Oh, but Stream, what if it's because human souls are more powerful and give her more power than monster souls? Well, then show it in the show! At every turn, Betty says she's going to try and erase all monsters, but she's only managed to kill a grand total of two monsters throughout the entire series. Stab Grilby, he is right there. I can't really even tell by the end of the series if or not Betty is antagonizing monsters because she made a promise to Jessica, or if this was her plan all along and she was just using Jessica for her resources. Like, the first episode makes it seem like her motivations were just to do something bad, and she kind of just latched onto Jessica's will to destroy the monsters. But the longer the series goes on, the more this becomes Betty's thing. Her motivation also changes again midway through season 2, from killing all the monsters to enslaving all the humans as well. Like, where is this coming from? Are you or are you not Agate? What is happening? Betty also feels less like a character and more like a plot device as the story moves along. Every time, and I mean every time that she is faced with a challenge, she just pulls some bullshit power out of her ass to make things go her way. The first 1 or 2 times this happens, the audience can suspend their disbelief as we're just getting to know a character and their powers. But the more this happens, especially when it happens every fucking time, it just turns into, okay, how do we artificially make Betty into a threat? And which new superpower is she going to be gaining this time to make it happen? If you actually took a look at the wiki page for Betty and tried reading all of her different powers and abilities, you would find that despite all of Camilla's desperate attempts to convince us that Betty is not a Mary Sue, she so very clearly is one. Betty has become the new pink gay.
I'm not pitiful!
Betty's whole theme of fear is executed horribly as well. The power is so inconsistent in how it manifests. Like, the fight she has with Frisk, this seems more like guilt than it does fear. Asriel? Why is she showing him Kara? Why is she showing Jessica her daughter? These all seem like sources of guilt for these characters, not fear. When we see Betty use her powers on Toriel, she specifically points out that Toriel is drowning in her guilt. So where does the fear aspect of all this come in? The only part of the story I could name off the top of my head that has executed this theme somewhat competently would be the second last episode where Papyrus almost loses Gaster. And it's not even fucking Betty executing this scene. Apparently, also according to the wiki, she feeds off fear to grow stronger, including hers. Why didn't she just fucking take care of Gaster in this instance then? She was clearly afraid. Literally, what was stopping her? And also, since when did souls have the ability to feed off of other people or emotions to become stronger? Betty's character assassination is also completely unreal. At the start of the series, even if she was monstrous, it at least seemed like she had some humanity left in her, like how she reacted to save Akumu, even if it meant she died in the process. But as the series goes on, Camilla smashes into our heads again and again that there can be no redemption found for her. And that's why Betty is the worst part of Glitchtale. She completely fucks up the idea of love overcoming all by saying, actually, I am just straight up evil and you cannot redeem me. She also gets the entire season to build up the fight between her and Frisk/Kara, as it's stated multiple times over that only determination can overcome fear. But then Gaster just overcomes her by getting really angry. Do you know what it does to your narrative when you spend the entire series building up towards one moment, that one definitive fight between fear and determination, and then telling the audience, fuck you actually, this bald Eggman is gonna kill the main villain instead? What was even the point of all this build-up, because the final villain isn't even Betty, it's this determination man thing. Ugh! There's a few more things I have to say about this character, but it's less centered around the actual characterization of her, and more the plot holes that she creates in the narrative. Speaking of, I can feel my arms and legs beginning to spaghettify, so that must mean we're approaching... So, the plot holes in this. We might as well pick up from where we left off, yeah? Did you know that the Soul of Fear actually isn't pink? Yep, that's right. Just throw episode 2 right out of the window because the Soul of Fear is actually dark orange. But Stream! Betty is pink and she's clearly the Soul of Fear. What's up with that? Well, my dear viewer, that's because the pinkness of Betty is the Bête Noire spell, which is a completely different spell from a spell that inverts your soul trait, which is what fear is, an inversion of bravery. Why is fear the trait that can counteract determination and not bravery? Who the fuck knows? And the only way you would be able to find this piece of information is through Wikipedia. That doesn't change how a major plot point of the story was just retconned so hard that it was completely rewritten to suit the author's new storyline she impulsively decided on because nothing in this fucking series is ever planned out. Betty also isn't monster or human? So then why did the anti-monster human device that Gaster was magically able to slip into the expansion of the core without setting off the EMD and without knowledge that he would ever have to use this weapon of mass destruction detect Betty at all? She was clearly unaffected by the blast, And if she was neither, she would not have shown up on the radar. How did Betty survive the hundreds of years between Agate creating her and the monsters being freed? Oh, she was just hibernating. You didn't know that? Ha! Look at this loser. They only watch the show and don't scrounge around on the wiki for clues and answers. Actually, can we talk real fast about how the humans were just so willing to accept that Betty and all her little minions that she sent out weren't monsters? Think about it. Monsters emerge from the earth, start settling into society, then as soon as the king is imprisoned, the city suddenly gets swarmed by these things that look like monsters and are stealing people's souls. All the while, the school founded by the former queen of monsters is also attacked, and several human children die in the process, but the queen remains completely unharmed. That doesn't sound the least bit suspicious to you? I am telling you, these people would not be cooperating with Jessica, even after that lame little announcement she made to trust the monsters and blah blah blah. Because who in their right or left mind would be able to make the distinction in this scenario? Especially when no monsters have died from this sudden invasion. Frisk and the others should 100% have been on the run from both Betty and the rest of the human race. And funnily enough, that would make for a better story because it shows how Betty incites fear and uses it as a tool to corner and weaken her opponents. But Camilla isn't paying me to rewrite this garbage series, and frankly, I've already offered too many good ideas on how to write it better that I should be suing her for wasting so much of my time. And how did Frisk even get to Betty for the first fight? Like, we see in the final episode that the area Frisk and Betty were fighting in was outside the barrier the city had put up. So how in the hell did Frisk get past it? Did he just ask super nicely, and the guards who were keeping the barrier in place let this human child pass into the unknown while they're trying to quarantine a threat that had disguised itself as a human for, as far as they're concerned, God knows how long? God knows the Wizard Council, who seems to have established the HSO, and therefore the AMG, would jump at the opportunity to kill all the monsters. Speaking of the Wizard Council, where the fuck did you come from? It was stated clear as day, and I know, because I reread this 5 separate times, that there had been no magic on the surface until the monsters returned. But Camilla just fucking forgets and gives Noah powers before the barrier ever fell. And apparently, Rave had been researching a way to combine magic and technology since he was way younger. And how do they all have magically trained squads of soldiers at their disposal? What is going on? The answer is, Camilla never plans out any of her goddamn series. You know what else is stupid though? The final villain of the series. I'm not talking about Betty, I'm talking about this thing. Until the last episode, we never had any reason to believe that Hate was capable of anything without a consciousness to latch onto and manipulate. Betty very clearly tells us that she is dead, she is no longer around, and Hate just takes over her body, soul, whatever anyways? What's even more infuriating is in episode 8, it seems like this thing is just embodying the trait for fear, and it keeps doing that until midway through episode 9, in which it becomes all of the traits, leaving the viewer absolutely flabbergasted at how the fuck it acquired all 6 other traits, and when it did that. Before, oh no, wait, it broke through its mold, and actually, it was determination all along. What? For those of you who didn't scrub through every bit of Glitchtale, this figure is Jesus from Hate's origins. So, did Hate just start with him, and it all has to come back to him or something? Why did the ending become determination versus determination when fear was the inverted trait of bravery? On that note, why was Gaster able to kill Betty? Like, at all. It was said again and again that Frisk was the only person who could kill Betty because he had determination. And then it switched to maybe Undyne under the right circumstances, since she also had determination, but Gaster had none. Absolutely none. Why was Gaster able to kill Betty? This thing only took over because Betty was dead, which means something else other than determination defeated fear. Camilla, please fix your fucking plot holes. While we're on the subject of Gaster, why can he just block the reset and load buttons? Why is he able to do that? This is a determination thing, and it is never, not once, established that Gaster has the determination to do these kinds of things. He just does, and the story fucking moves on. Speaking of old-ass monsters, hey Asgore, how come you didn't recognize that a pink soul was a threat? How did Toriel not recognize it? Or did neither Gaster nor Sans nor Azriel bother to mention it to the king and queen? Oh, Gaster has memory issues, fine, but there should be no good reason why Toriel or Asgore didn't recognize the immediate and severe threat Betty posed if the spells used to create her were so forbidden, and the two clearly recognize and remember Agate. Oh, and we haven't even touched about the whole humans cannot regenerate their bodies through magical means. If they can't do that, then what the fuck is this? Kara is clearly still in control of Frisk's body, where Frisk just pops out, blocks a hit, and then evaporates. What about Kara? Like, if this isn't magic, why did Kara just disappear? His corpse should still be at the entrance of the ruins, and he didn't come back as a zombie. And don't tell me that this was just a glitch, Camilla. I'm going to kill. Oh, and by golly gosh, we haven't even discussed the timeline bullshit yet. So, you want to explain to me how any of this works? First off, Frisk replaces Kara in the timeline, and had some of their actions erased because Kara wouldn't have made the same choices. You cannot then place Kara in the same point of the story because the story would be vastly different if Kara had made different choices than Frisk. In fact, without Frisk, we would not have this happy ending at all. We would be stuck in the underground again, Gaster and Azrael dead, and Kara as spooky ghost haunting the ruins. This is why, unless you can do it well, you don't fuck with time travel of any sort. Second, this second timeline bullshit doesn't make a fucking lick of sense. How are we going to follow Frisk's journey through the first timeline if, in the future, Frisk had already erased the first timeline and replaced himself with Kara? Also, try and tell me where the first timeline ends and the second one starts. Oh, you don't know? Well, clearly you're not a real Glitchtale fan, because any fan worth their salt would be able to tell you that the first timeline ends at the middle of episode 4, part 2, and everything after that was the second timeline. How were we watching the second timeline if the second timeline was created in episode 6? Magic! How are things still left from when Frisk was around in the second timeline? Well, you see, this timeline bullshit was so confusing when I tried figuring it out. I had to pause in my watch notes just to dedicate a section to how the timeline was playing out and what the fuck was going on. Okay, you know what? I'm done. Well, here we are, finally at the end of this video. This script is the third version of this video, and it has taken me quite literally 2 years to find the time, energy, and the will to care enough to go through everything. I've admittedly probably still missed parts of the show because of how long it took just to script this whole fucking thing, that smaller complaints were lost in transition. Glitchtale as a series has quite literally failed in every single category a show can fail in. If it feels like I've been going really hard on Camilla and purposely making her the butt of my jokes in this video, that's because I have. I wanted to give her a taste of her own medicine. You know, Camilla, for someone who seems so proud of your original ideas, you would think that your series would at least have 2 whole legs to stand on. Instead, I find plagiarized lines and animation, a story with the consistency of a fucking rock quarry, a horribly toxic community that you grew and encouraged, art direction that was a garbage mess, which is funny considering you're an artist, and plot holes the size of the fucking sun. I will fully admit that this is not going to help Camilla in the slightest, and I don't expect this video's critiques to be taken since they're so heavily layered in jabs. But honestly, I really don't care if Camilla changes or fixes her series. I made most of this video to get out my frustrations with the series, and that's all this video really is. This script is actually cut down by quite a chunk, as I was originally planning to pick through every little detail and plot contrivance before I realized that not only would that drive me fucking insane, it would also not be a very fun video to watch. Glitchtale is honestly a horrible representation of what the Undertale community has to offer. The fandom is no doubt fucking awful at times, but there's also so many artists who have contributed and are still contributing beautiful love letters to the silly little indie game that touched us all. I have found some of my favorite artists and greatest inspirations in this fandom, and the dedication some fans have are truly mind-boggling and heartwarming. I could frankly just sit here forever rambling about all my favorite stories that have come out of this niche community, or talk about the endless amounts of amazing animations or songs inspired by Undertale. Hell, maybe I will one day, because I've watched MMD Undertale videos with more coherent fight scenes and better uses of lighting and color theory than Glitchtale. There is a very good reason, I feel, that the Undertale community has stood the test of time, and why so many people still gush and love the game 8 years after its release. But at the end of the day, the one thing that remains entirely unchanged is the fact that Glitchtale is objectively bad, and if you disagree, you are objectively wrong. Bye! Okay, I've not done one of these outro thingies in a long time. Sorry for the 6-month delay in between this upload and the last. I've been very, very busy with university, and also I've just not had the motivation to make videos as of lately. Hopefully with this video though, that is changing. I've been juggling some ideas around for future videos on this channel. And of course, I would love to give a massive shout out to Bored Oranges for joining me on this horrific adventure into why Glitchtale is fucking awful. This video would honestly probably not be made if he had not offered to help me with covering parts of the video. And I did remember this time. If you like or dislike or disagree or fucking hate me, just leave it in the comments. I love reading your feedback. It helps me improve my videos and it lets me know what you guys enjoy and don't enjoy. Yeah, I'll see you in the next one, whenever that may be. Bye.